Revelation, chapter 6. We'll be looking at verses 3 through 8. And when we look at these verses, we are looking into our future. Christ is taking back the universe from the usurper, Satan, and his demons. This, as we come to chapter 6, is the beginning of the final wrath. The rapture of the church happens first. I have no doubts about that. The more I study my Bible, the more I'm convinced that the rapture happens before the tribulation period, despite what others might say about it. Sin has been taking its toll on this earth from the time Adam sinned until now. It's been taking its toll, and it's going to continue to take its toll. And it ends up with the judgment of God. The world is given over to lust and pride and self-indulgence. And let me say, I find it amazing that pride is the thing that was the fall of Satan. And I think pride is what you can find as the root of any and all sins, man's pride. And yet, we are celebrating Pride Month in America right now. And that's a very interesting thought to me that they use that term, and it's what Satan fell from. It's his own pride. We have immorality that is running rampant across the world. It has been since the time Adam was here. But it's going to continue, isn't it? We have the rejection of God. We have the rejection of Christ. And we have the rejection of the truth of Scripture. So Jesus breaks the first seal. The scroll that God had in his hand, the will, the rights of the universe, Jesus takes and he breaks the seal. And as he breaks the seal, events begin to unfold. And in my head, as I see this scene playing out, and the angel says, "Come and see," he's not really reading, is he? It's almost like this seal opens up and it's a TV screen, and he looks in and sees things happening instead of words being written. And he's not really reading what it says. He's seeing things as they play out. And I don't know, in my head I see this like this futuristic thing where, I don't know, the scroll unrolls, and off the top of the scroll the scenes are being played out over the top of the scrolls. That's just my own imagination of how Hollywood would do that. And maybe that's what Jesus is doing. I have no clue. But it's unrolled. And the first seal out of the 7, and really the first 4 seals out of the 7, take up the first half of the tribulation period. Remember, the tribulation period is broken up into 2 halves. 3.5 years, 3.5 years. Second 3.5 years, we call the Great Tribulation. Things in the first 3.5 years they're not good, but they're not as bad as they're going to be in the second 3.5 years. The first 4 seals depict horsemen, as each of the 4 seals are open, and that's where we get the term the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. It's these 4 guys as these seals are broken. Verse 2, the first horseman brings a time period of peace and prosperity. And that begins the tribulation period, by the way. The 7 years are marked by a peace treaty that's made by the Antichrist with Israel. And there is this time of peace as this horseman comes about. And he's riding a horse. It's a sign of authority. It's a sign of power. He's carrying a bow. There's no arrow in it because he doesn't actually have to shoot it. But there is this fear that's building up. It's peace, but it's a forced peace, really. And I think in the backgrounds, there are some really bad things happening. Sometimes we look out in America and we might say, oh, things seem pretty good right now. But in the background, what the politicians and all the powerful people in America are doing are pretty bad, probably. And that's kind of what this is looking like. It's a peace, but it's not really peace. The white means that there is a conquering, false purity and false righteousness. The bow means that there's authority and there's conquering without bloodshed. And by the way, the crown was given and not taken. If you start shooting the arrows, then maybe you take it, right? But since he never has to shoot any arrows, the crown is given. So the world crowns peace as king. Then in verse number 3, we have this breaking of the second seal. I don't think that this is very long after the breaking of the first seal. I don't know how much time passes. I don't think it's a great amount of time. Got to be less than 3.5 years in any case, right? So a little bit of time passes. And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, "Come and see." So remember, we had 4 angels, 4 beasts that were around the throne of God in the vision. One angel says, "Come and see," and he sets into motion that first horseman. Now, the second angel says, "Come and see," and he sets into motion this second seal. And what is it? Let's read it real quick. "And there went out another horse that was red. Power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. There was given unto him a great sword." First seal, peace. Second seal, peace is taken away. Peace isn't very long. Short-lived peace. And it follows what Matthew 24 lays out for us too. When we read Matthew 24, he said in verses 4 and 5, "You will hear of wars and rumors of wars." Verse number 7 says, "Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom." What is happening here? Well, when you have peace, there's no wars, right? That's what it's referencing here on this earth. If you're going to break the peace, what does it mean? War is going to break out. Change my page. "And there went out another horse that was red." The horses in the Bible are associated with triumph, majesty, power, might, and force. So you have a red horse that's going out, and he's powerful. And even in today's age, we still talk about horses as being powerful, right? If you get a muscle car, what do you talk about? How many horsepower does that car have? I think that crazy car that Chrysler makes right now, what's it called? It's something hell. The Hellcat. That's the name of it. 750 horsepower. Crazy, insane amount of horsepower in that engine. We still talk about horsepower. Horses have always been a sign of strength, right? In the olden days, you would get horses for what? Plowing, to work. They're powerful. Clydesdales are an amazing horse. Have you ever stood next to a Clydesdale? Oh my goodness. Look up at them like that, don't you? They're huge. This is a force, and it's coming, and it's a red horse as opposed to the white horse. Let me tell you what, I'd much rather see a white horse than a red horse. Because this red horse is mean and he's bad. Red like fire, red like blood. It speaks of a Holocaust. It speaks of war. It speaks of devastation. Men are going to slay men. Going to be a bad thing. And it says there too, look, a great sword is given to him. And there was given unto him a great sword. It's showing great destruction. That's what swords are for. Now notice, one thing I want you to pay attention to, this is why I think the church can't really be here at the time, is this is all being done by God. And we're going to come up to some verses, and some of these seals are going to be broken, and we're going to see that much of it is the vengeance and wrath of God. And he doesn't have that upon believers. He doesn't have that on the Christians. He has it on an unregenerate, unredeemed world and people. Granted, some of the people at that time are going to become believers, right? 144,000 in particular, Jews, will be believers, and they're going to go out, and they're going to preach, and they're going to teach. And by the way, one of the reasons for this war, and I believe that this war is going to start here, and this war is going to continue on for the rest of the tribulation period. This is non-stop war for 3 years. Close to 3.5 years, I think. Fighting and death and destruction. And nations are going to be in a free-for-all. And I don't care where you live on this earth, I think it's going to be a free-for-all. People say, where's America in this whole thing? I think they're just going to be fighting each other. They ain't going to be worried about what's going on over in Jerusalem. They're going to be a mess in America. They're not going to be trying to be the peace of the world, where we're supposed to be some kind of peacekeepers, right, all over the world. That's where we're like the world's moral compass, right? That's why much of the world hates us. Because they say they think they're better than the rest of us. They think they're doing this. They think they're doing that. And they're mad at us. And to a point, we do need to be over there keeping some kind of peace. Or what do? They get together and try to figure out how to bomb the Twin Towers, don't they? We lose all of our intelligence and all that kind of stuff. Well, let me tell you what. Tribulation period happened. The rapture happened. All these bad things start happening. War breaks out. I think America's going to be fighting with each other. They're going to be fighting with Central America. They're going to be fighting with Canada. They're going to be fighting with South America. And I think China's going to be fighting all their own wars, and Africa and all those places. But the center of everything is going to hover around Jerusalem during this whole time. And so all these writings that we have are going to be centering and looking at what's going on there in Jerusalem. And I believe these wars continue all the way to the point where we have the Battle of Armageddon. There's going to be horrible, fierce, nasty battles. This is not the wrath of Satan. This is the wrath of God that's going to be poured out then. God will allow peace for a little while, then the war. Mark 13, verses 7 through 8 says, "And when you hear of wars and rumors of wars, don't be frightened. Those things must take place. That's not yet the end. That's the beginning of the birth pangs." Remember, we said at the beginning of the tribulation, there's little pains that are happening, like little labor pains that you start getting when you start first having labor pains. This is the beginning of it all. But it has to take place. Then he says, "There went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth." He's not going to do it kindly. He's going to take peace from the earth. It's a powerful thing. It's by force. These wars are going to happen. Men, and it says, "and that they should kill one another." Men are going to slay one another. This is violent. It's going to be all over the earth. Don't know the specifics, really. For me to say that they're going to be fighting in America, that's just what I imagine. That's me adding on to this what I believe it must mean. But basically it says men are going to kill each other all over this earth. And whatever that looks like, when it happens, I guess we'll find out, right? But it's going to be a horrible time and ugly. And you'll be happy you're not here. And a great sword was given to him. I would tell you the Greek word that's used here, but I can't pronounce it. And everybody in Sunday school knows how well I pronounce words. So it's a sword. It's a soldier's sword. And it's one that is carried into battle. It's also used as an assassin's weapon. So it's not this great big huge broadsword. It's a double-edged sword that is very sharp and can be used in deception as like an assassin would use. And it's a very dangerous sword. It's used in close hand-to-hand battle. And it depicts war, assassination, rebellion, revolt, and massacre all over the earth. Daniel 8:24 says, he will destroy to an extraordinary degree. He will destroy mighty men and the holy people. This is the Antichrist. He's the one that's doing it. He made a peace treaty first, then he turns to war. And by the way, Daniel 11, verses 36 through 38, if you get a chance, you can look that up and you can read it. But it says the king, which is the Antichrist at that time, he's going to do according to his will. He's going to set himself up to be worshipped. And that's why everything is going to hover around Jerusalem, because that's where he's going to set himself up at, right? He's going to set himself up in the temple to be worshipped. He's going to speak against God. He's going to seem to prosper, especially at first. People are going to seem to follow him. There's going to seem to be peace. There's going to seem to be spirituality that goes out. I believe, and you can read it there in Daniel chapter 11, it says that he has no natural affection towards women. I think he's a homosexual. And when we talk about Pride Month and homosexuality and all that kind of stuff, 50 years ago, men couldn't hardly preach a sermon about the Antichrist and say, well, he'll be a homosexual, because no one would believe it 50 years ago, right? Who would step out and say they were a homosexual? Well, today's day and age, there's no problem with that, is there? You can imagine beyond a shadow of a doubt that some man could step out and be a leader, a world leader, and say, I'm a homosexual. All over America right now, right? We have governors and we have politicians and all kinds of people. It's a real thing now. And if you think we're headed towards the end times, that might be another great example of how the end time things could easily happen. He's going to be worshipped as God, and he will worship no other God. People will be forced to worship and honor him. They'll bring him gold and silver and costly stones and treasures. He will be extremely wealthy. That's how he'll finance his wars. And then in Daniel chapter 11 and verse number 40, it says, the king of the south, which is probably Egypt or out of Egypt, that's what's to the south, maybe all of Africa, every nation south of Jerusalem, it says, the king of the south will push at him. And literally it's the word for a goat pushing on something. You ever seen a goat use his head to push on things? That's the same word. So all of these nations, probably from the south, all of Africa, whatever, they're going to come at him like a ram, like a goat with his head down, and it's going to push at him. It's an attack. And then it says the king of the north will come like a whirlwind. Now, 50 years ago, the 1980s, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, they'd tell you that's Russia, wouldn't they? Nowadays, Russia's not quite such a huge force. They've got their own issues. They're a pretty poor nation nowadays. But Someone from the north, maybe an Arab alliance. Maybe that would make a lot of sense, wouldn't it? They're all out after Jerusalem right now anyways, after Israel. So they're going to come out of the north because it's the easiest way to get to Jerusalem from there. You can't really come from the west. You can't really come from the east. So you're going to have two groups coming against each other. There's wars and battles and horrible things going on. Then verse number 5. And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say. So now we have another angel. He says, come and see. And behold, and I beheld. Now there's shock in that verse right there. There's shock in those words. I couldn't believe what was going on. And lo, a black horse. All right, you got a white horse, peace. You got a red horse, which is war, bloodshed. Now you got a third horse, and he's black. It's famine. Leviticus 5, 8 through 10 indicates that black is the color of famine. Well, what's famine? It's hunger. Worldwide hunger. And I know we talked about being hungry in Sunday school. I don't know if we really understand hunger, do we? I mean, I know what it's like to be hungry. The other day, I was pretty hungry. And I got a little headache. And then I put some food in my mouth, and it was all good. We don't understand hunger. Not like what this is talking about. We see pictures of these people from Ethiopia and different countries. Haiti, where these kids are digging in the garbage. And they don't have any meat on their bones. And their stomach is distended. And they're hungry. And they're starving. Well, that's the kind of hunger that's going to be going on during this time. A black horse. And he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. His weapon, remember, each guy right now has a weapon, right? First guy has a bow, no arrows. Second guy has a sword, slaughtering everybody. This guy has balances. Well, what do you use balances for? What do you use scales for? Measuring food. That's what they're going to be doing with this. And what he's indicating is food is going to be rationed. It's going to be measured out. I don't know if you guys can remember seeing food lines, but I know when we've traveled to some different big cities, some of these churches have these soup kitchens, or that's what we call them, soup kitchens, right? Because we just imagine they're putting soup in a bowl for them. I don't know what they're really giving them. They might not even be giving them soup. But that's what we think of, right? And during the great 1930s Depression. It's like a game show, right? The $10,000 pyramid. The great 1930s Depression. People lined up to get food, didn't they? People didn't have much. Rations were handed out. You could go down and get grains in baskets and things like that. That's what we see people doing. That's what we heard of people doing. Probably none of us saw it, right? But we've heard about that. Maybe some of your parents went through it. That's what it's going to be like. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, okay, four beasts. Where did we say the four beasts were? Around the throne. Who did we say was the throne? God. So what's the voice from the midst of the four beasts? It's God. Remember, this is all judgment from God. This is all God doing things, right? He's just empowering these angels to do it. So from the midst of the four beasts, a measure of wheat for a penny. Oh, big deal. I wish I could go buy a measure of wheat for a penny right now, right? A measure of wheat is what a man would eat in a day. That's basically his provisions for a day. A penny is what he made in a day. So what he's saying here is, for a man to feed himself, he's going to have to work a whole day. Well, what about his wife and his kids? Don't have anything for them, right? So what's the man going to do, probably? Just like men back in the 1930s did. They went down and bought the bread or bought the grains, and they mixed it into some kind of bread, and everybody ate, and he probably ate less. Everybody's starving. Probably make sure their kids get something. So that's what a good dad does, right? And 3 measures of barley for a penny. Barley is animal food. You want enough animal food to feed 3 days' work. Malnourished people eating barley. Doing your best with it. Making ends meet any way that you possibly can. And see, thou hurt not the oil and the wine. Now, I don't think it means there, when he says, hurt not the oil and the wine, I don't think it means that he's telling the angel to allow it to flow freely. In other words, yeah, there'll be plenty of oil, there'll be plenty of wine. I don't think that's what that means. I think it means that the people in the time and in the age that are going through this, they're going to treat it like gold. They will not allow it to go bad. What do you do with oil? You mix it with the barley. You mix it with the grains to do something with it. What's the wine? It's probably the only type of fresh drink you can get at the time, and that's probably what it's referencing there. You know, today's day and age, we have water and all kinds of things to drink. Back in the Bible days, when John is writing this, about the only clean thing you could drink at time was wine. Everything else was bad. Where do you get fresh water at in those days? You don't. One of the things that you would do would be to take the wine and let it turn into alcohol and mix it with some water so it would kill off the bacteria in the water so you could drink it. Very common thing to do. And that's why the fresh grape juice was the greatest thing in the world to them, by the way. That's what the kings drank. I have no doubts about it, because no one else could really afford to do that. Everybody else would have to mix it up and let it start fermenting, and the kings would drink fresh grape juice. It was a luxury to have, I believe. So don't hurt the wine. I believe that's what it means. Some preachers will tell you that he's telling the angel just to allow them to have a little kind of grace, and I guess if that's what you want to go with it. But the reality is, people are going to be starving to death. And that's what it's talking about there. Now verse number 7. When he had opened the 4th seal, I heard the voice of the 4th beast say, come and see. So here's the 4th horseman. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse. Now in the Greek, this carries the idea that it's not just pale, it's sick pale. Like, you know, when you look at someone and you say, you're looking a little green around the gills, buddy. That's what it's talking about. It's almost like a green, yellow, sick, pale horse. Because he's going to be talking about pestilence and decomposition and corpses and all these types of things. So a pale horse. Maybe a pale green horse. And who is the rider? His name that sat on him was Death. Well, we've already got war, and we already have hunger and people dying of hunger. Now we've got a guy called Death. Well, where's this going? This is bad, you know, and this is in the first 3.5 years. And, you know, if you put it in perspective, you know, Donald Trump was our president for 4 years. May have seemed like a long time to some people, may have seemed like a short time to some people. I don't know. Seemed like a short time. Didn't seem like he was president for very long. 4 years goes by fast. We're talking about 3.5 years here. Short time of peace. War, hunger, now pestilence, death. Well, what follows war? Whenever you have war, what follows it? Famine always follows it, doesn't it? Because you blow the places up. You ever seen pictures of Japan after we blew them up? You ever seen pictures of like Germany after World War II, what it looked like? We went through all kinds of bombings. All kinds of people died, and then what was left over? Just rubble. How do you grow anything in that? Famine. That's what happens. Then, death. Natural flow of things. And what follows death? Well, look what it says. And hell followed with him. What follows death? Hades, the grave. You know what's going to happen to most of these people that die during this time? They're going to hell. They're not believers. The believers have all been raptured off this earth. Most of the people here are all unbelievers. So this is hell, Hades. And power was given unto them over the fourth part of the earth. Quarter of the earth is going to die. You think COVID was bad? COVID is nothing. They will wish that all they had to deal with was COVID. Quarter of the earth is going to die. What's that? 2 billion people? Somewhere in that range, 1.75 or whatever it really is. That's a lot of people to die. COVID hasn't reached anything close to that. Like what, America, we're 600,000? I think that's the official number that they give to it right now. This is 1.5 to 2 billion people dying. The sword, by the way, is in connection with war and famine. It says it's going to kill with the sword. The sword will kill with hunger. Many are going to starve to death. And the death is going to be from all kinds of things. Disease, earthquakes, wars, natural disasters, man killing man. And it says this, a fourth part of the earth to kill with the sword and with hunger and with death. So all those things are going to be used. And then he says this, and with the beasts of the earth. What do you think is going to happen to the lion in Africa? Nothing to eat. What do you think he's going to go do? Going to go eat man. What do you think the elephant's going to do? He's going to go trample on man. He's not going to eat him probably, but people say, well, that's good because, you know, we'll just go live in America where there's no beasts to eat us. Do you know what animal, I believe, has caused the most death over the face of this earth? Is probably the rat. Think about the bubonic plague. Think about all the diseases that they carry. Mosquitoes. Think about what they've brought with Lyme's. Well, yeah, that's the tick, right? Well, still, mosquito carries Nile virus and all kinds of stuff. Yellow fever. Malaria, that's the other good one to get, yeah. My friend David Powers went to Papua New Guinea and got malaria. That was fun for him. One more year of college to go with malaria. Folks, beasts can be anything. And they're going to spread disease. And they're going to eat people. And they're going to destroy people. and a quarter of the earth is going to die. At this moment, as we keep going, guess what? More and more and more are going to keep dying. It's when we start going through it, it almost adds up to 100%. Well, at the end, except for the believers, it is 100%, right? We're going to finally get to the separation of the sheep and goats. It's an amazing amount of death and horrible things going on. Thank God we won't be here for it. Be raptured off. Let's have a word of prayer. And we'll have a closing song. Father, Lord, we just pray that as we study these things about the end time, and as we keep seeing things getting worse and worse and worse, I just pray, Lord, that we can be encouraged to go out and tell others about you. We'd be encouraged to lead others to you so that they won't have to go through these times, face these times. And even if they don't have to face these times, that they wouldn't face eternity in Hades and hell. Lord, I pray that you'll help us to be good stewards of your word. We ask these things in your name. Amen. All right, number 283.